Disney and Hearst have put A+E Global Media up for sale in the latest cable TV divestment. Netflix is still consumers' top brand, HBO Max is back, and Apple may pick up F1. Listen on.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and that was Colin Dixon from In-Screen Media at the top there. And we are recording after the long July 4th weekend. Colin, how was your long weekend? What do you, as a Brit, do you feel any sense of qualm July 4th?
Well, primarily I'm an American, Will. I have an American passport. So I celebrate it along with everybody else, although I don't celebrate with hot dogs.
Yes.
I actually ended up taking a little bit of a longer break and did some great stuff. I got to some art museums and I got to the San Francisco Exploratorium and I had a great time.
Well, you may be an American, Colin, but I hate to break the news, you still sound like a Brit, at least in my ear. So.
That's almost certainly true. But anyway, it's been a little bit of a busy week. We're going to do a bit of around the horn today, cover 4 stories, and you're going to kick us off with A+E.
Right. So, excuse me, as we've discussed on prior podcasts, it seems that the media industry is trying to offload its cable networks as fast as it can. We already know about the NBCU networks and the Warner Brothers Discovery networks, and now to add to the list, this week was news that Hearst and Disney, which own A+E Global Media, which includes the A+E networks Lifetime and History, that those networks have been put up for sale as well. Now, a caveat is that Disney has said in the past and seemed committed to holding on to their wholly owned cable networks, ESPN, of course, being at the top of the list, but all the ESPN networks, Disney Channel, etc. But they seem ready now to part with the A+E networks, and can't say that we're terribly surprised by that, Colin. Seems like cable networks went from being one of the most well-loved industries to now being one that is everybody's trying to get out of. And I just thought it was interesting to take a look at the number of cable networks that are up for sale now or spinoff. Where do they stand in terms of overall ratings and audience share? And this is interesting. So if we look at the top 30 TV networks, 5 of them, of course, are the broadcast networks and PBS. So take them off the top. Now we're looking at 25 cable networks. Of those 25 cable networks, it looks like, if we're doing this right, it looks like 13 of those 25 networks are being sold or spun off. Number 3, TNT. Number 7, TBS, assuming that TBS is part of the spinoff. Not 100% sure about that. Number 9, MSNBC. 11, TLC. 12, HGTV. 13, Lifetime. 15, Food TV. 19, CNN. 20, USA. 24, History. 25, ID. 26, Discovery. 27, True TV. That's the top 30. If we went on to look past the top 30, then we pick up networks like A+E that is number 33. So anyway, looking at those top 25 networks, Colin, more than half up for grabs now. Talk about an evolution of the industry, right?
It is a really big change, Will. And, you know, of course, this was all led off by NBCU and Comcast, saying that they were going to be spinning off their networks. Of course, Disney is the sort of outlier here, but because they've stated pretty clearly that they're not, but they're co-owners of A+E, right?
Yeah, exactly. As I just said, Disney is committed to its wholly owned networks, but it's a half owner in the A+E Global Media, which is now up for sale.
Yeah, and it's a messy business, this sale, though, Will, because I heard this morning that TCM, which is also part of Warner Brothers Discovery, which I had assumed would be going to their global networks along with TNT and CNN. Well, it turns out that is not happening, or at least not directly. That station is being sort of special cased and is going to be co-owned between the streaming side and the network side. I guess it kind of makes sense because TCM, Turner Classic Movies, is kind of reliant on Warner Brothers for some of its movies. But I just don't know how a sort of deal like this can possibly work with two independent companies. Apparently, David Zaslav's Studios and Streaming Group is going to remain responsible for creative functions like programming and strategy, while distribution and business operations will be handled by Gunnar Weidenfeld's Global Networks, which is the other side of the spin-off company. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. But I don't know if this enhances the chances that I'm going to get Filmstruck, which was TCM's subscription video on demand service back about 4 years ago, which I loved. I'm not sure if that enhances the chances of me getting that back or not, but I just don't see how co-ownership like this can work, and leaving the creative stuff in David Zaslav's hands doesn't sound great to me.
Yeah, I hear you on all that. And actually, I just wanted to return quickly to the kind of the state of play with cable TV networks. Again, the 13 out of 25. A couple of weeks ago, we reviewed the most recent data from Nielsen's The Gauge. And in that podcast, we discussed the collapse of audience by cable networks. 4 years ago, they had 39% audience share. May of 21, that is. May of 25, they were down to 24.1%. And that was that decline due to the disinvestment in cable TV network originals by the media companies, focusing instead on their streaming services. And all of this, streaming, of course, that's happened, primarily entertainment oriented. So, cable TV networks have really fallen in the last 4 years, and I think that's why we see them all now on the block. Yeah.
I mean, you think about networks like Sci-Fi and USA Network. They were just so dominant. 15, 20 years ago, there was great content on those networks, and they were definitely, worth the price of admission, and people were watching them. Now they're just a wasteland of reruns.
Well, speaking of the decline of cable, their loss has been Netflix's gain, and you have covered new survey data showing yet again Netflix as the number one brand in the TV business.
Yeah, that's right. So the Strategic Council's latest survey of 1,400 US consumers showed Netflix atop the list once again. So basically they go out and they ask people what their must-keep TV brands are in the US. And Netflix has been ranked number one for 2 years running. ABC, actually, there really wasn't much change here amongst the top five, Will. It was Netflix number one, ABC number two, Prime Video number three, CBS 4, and Fox 5. No changes at all there. Below that, NBC and Hulu switched places this year. NBC went to 6 and Hulu went to 7. And Disney Plus is 8 and Paramount Plus is 9. So 6 of the top 10 brands are streaming brands, Will, which is kind of interesting, right? And the top 4, the rest are basically the broadcasters: ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. So that's pretty interesting. And it set me thinking of how is it Netflix has got themselves into this position? But there is one comment I should make before I chat a little bit about how they got to this position, and that is that the survey didn't appear to include YouTube. And you and I were chatting before we got going with the recording, and I think both of us think that YouTube would probably have been number one if they had included it. Because it has become so popular. And, looking at Nielsen's The Gauge ratings, It's by far the most watched property on television these days. So, well, maybe I should stop there and just see if you have any comments on that data.
No, I mean, I concur. And Netflix, as we all know, is, other than YouTube, is the greatest streaming success story out there. They've been an innovator every step of the way, and it's really paid off for them.
Yeah. So I think there are two keys to Netflix's success, Will, in remaining atop. And I think Netflix is probably the one truly daily, well, aside from YouTube, is the one truly daily service, the one that subscribers go into every day. And I think it comes down to content flow. And I say content flow very specifically because Netflix does not have the largest library. Prime Video certainly does. At least I was looking at some data from Ampere Analysis, and they say that Amazon Prime Video has almost 17,000 titles in its library. Netflix has just over 8, but Max, Hulu, and Peacock and Discovery Plus, they all have around about the same, between 7,000 and 8,000 titles in their library. So it's not a question of library size. And it's really not, I think, a question of spectacular hits either. Interestingly, it's not a factor of having all originals, having the most originals, which probably Netflix does, because of course Netflix has had great success with Suits, Yellowstone, Young Sheldon, and others. I think what it really comes down to here is content flow. And Netflix in 2024, they added over 700 movies and TV shows. That means that's almost 2 per day. And what that, for subscribers, what that means is there's something new basically every time they come in. And I think that's what keeps people coming in and using Netflix on such a regular basis. And the second part of their success is technology. And basically, they've really been focused so much on getting people to watch something as quickly as possible. And it's something that they return to again and again. That's what their most recent interface update was all about. The company said on their website that that's what they were really trying to do. They were trying to get people to content more quickly that they would want. So there it's a combination of ease of use and of excellent recommendations that get people to something to watch. So I think that's really the keys to success for Netflix in the market, Will, and there's still nobody to touch them.
I think that's right, Colin. Just to focus on the interface for a second, they have updated that interface consistently over the years, and they are, I think they're, as always, on a quest to do what you just said, which is to get viewers in quickly as possible, get them exposed to new content as easily as possible, crank up that viewership, which in turn flows right into loyalty and reduced churn. And they have that down to a science. Unlike any other streamer, they really focus on that innovation of that UI, and I think the proof is in the pudding. They've really succeeded with it.
I agree. And I was thinking just there for a second about the other place that people typically go to try and find something to watch is the tvOS itself, right? But the tvOS typically doesn't feature Netflix because Netflix doesn't share, and the tvOS is compromised itself. I mean, I started up my flipping Google TV this week and was confronted with an ad for Target in the primary view, in that hero bar, followed by an ad for Coke, when really I want to watch content. I don't want to flip an ad for Coke and for Target stuck in my face. Wouldn't you go straight to Netflix in that situation? Because at least they're going to tell me about content. But that's definitely the keys to success there, I think, for Netflix.
Well, Colin, first of all, hopefully you won't drop Google TV, because there's a chance that you're the sole remaining customer of Google, user of Google TV in the United States. So their business could drop by 100% if you disconnect.
Well, if anybody
it wasn't that bad.
If anybody from Google TV is listening, this is unacceptable to me, and I probably am going to go back to using Roku, which at least doesn't stick me with an ad when I start the thing. Or maybe I'm going to move my Apple TV. Goodness, you know I'm not a fan of Apple products, but maybe I'm going to start using my Apple TV.
Well, you turn on your Roku TV, Colin, and you'll see an ad in the right side of the interface.
This is true.
It's true. Not a full take. I think what you're describing was a full takeover ad, a full video takeover, which is different than a right column. But look, we have to acknowledge the fact that, as we heard from Jonathan Carson at Antenna a few weeks ago, the ad-supported part of the overall streaming business is where all of the growth in the business has been, and CTV ad revenue continues to increase as the most desirable ad inventory out there. And I think we have to expect that device makers, platforms, networks, blah, 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 anybody who has an inventory to sell or to create, just as you just described with Google TV, is going to do it. That's just the name of the game now. Yeah.
Well, my last word on this is the one difference between what the TV OSs are doing and what Netflix is doing is Netflix lets me buy out of the ads, and I can't do that with the TV interface. And I don't know that I would want to pay a TV provider a regular stipend for using their TV anyway. But maybe that's enough on that topic. We have another topic. I think this almost classes as a rant as well, Will, doesn't it? About Max.
Can't believe we're going to talk about Max again, but what the heck. This week they finally, after announcing a couple of months ago that they were going to revert to the HBO Max brand from the Max brand that they instituted a couple of years ago, they actually did it. They actually started flowing that update in through the app stores and everywhere else. So now shows up as HBO Max, brings them right back to where they were less than 2 years ago. We've talked about this before, so I feel like we're really sort of beating a dead dog on this one, but just worth noting again that these decisions that executives make, these decisions that then cost a bunch of resources, both financial, human resources, to do things that then get reversed just 2 years later. There's a cost to that, and there's a cost in not just money, but in distraction, corporate IQ, etc. And we just talked about Netflix, and to be fair, they've had a couple of stumbles along the way, Quickster being the big one. So they're not perfect, but these kinds of things, changing out this gold standard name HBO to just call the app Max, and then come right back again less than 2 years later with the HBO name. Those mistakes, they're costly in one way or the other. And, who knows what it would have been had they stayed with HBO Max. They have grown the number of subscribers, to be fair. I think they'll probably do better with sub-acquisition, yet leveraging that gold standard HBO name now. But it's a couple of years that they can't get back.
Yeah, and hidden underneath of that, Will, is another reversal. Remember that they took a whole bunch of Discovery content and dumped it into Max to sort of justify the Max title. And they've quietly been removing that content because, of course, Discovery Plus is going to go into global networks. That's going to be part of global networks. It's not going to be part of the streaming side of things. So they've really unwound both of the key pieces that created Max. And I have to say, you and I were highly critical of both movements. I said at the time, why are you putting this Discovery content in there? Because there didn't seem to be much overlap. But, there you go. It took them 2 years to figure out something that I think was intrinsically obvious at the time. But there you go.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Colin. I mean, we can pat ourselves on the back for saying it was not a smart thing to do, but as you just said, it was such an obviously not smart thing to do that I don't think we really even necessarily distinguished ourselves so much by just calling it out as an obviously not smart thing to do.
I think there were a lot of people going, why would you walk away from one of the best known brands in television? Why would you do that? Well, it was a mistake, and so they're not. But anyway, we've got one more topic we want to talk about, and we'll talk about this one quite quickly, I think. News dropped this week that Apple is apparently very interested in picking up the rights to Formula One. Now, of course, Apple has had a big success with F1, the movie starring Brad Pitt. Now, I say a big success. It has been a big success. I think it earned $250 million over the holiday period. Apparently, it cost $300 million to make, so they've still got a little bit of ways to go before they make back what they put into that movie. And by all accounts, it is a very good movie. And I was listening to some F1 fans who said it was a very, very good representation of the way F1 really is. So it's a really tremendous movie. But it certainly seems to have ignited interest from Apple in picking up those rights. Now, it's currently owned by Disney ESPN. Disney had an exclusive period to negotiate a new contract. They let that period elapse without completing a contract with the owners of F1, who is Liberty Media. So it's non-exclusive now, and apparently Apple has stepped in, seeing the success of F1 the movie, and the fact that they have now quite a lot of experience producing live content with, of course, Major League Baseball, Friday night doubleheaders, and with MLS, where they did that landmark deal with MLS a couple of years ago, and are now providing that live in the market too. So they're very interesting participants in the bidding here. I would be very surprised if Netflix isn't sniffing around as well. Netflix, of course, has been edging into the sports space, although they say they're still event-based. We all know that that's just a smokescreen, that if they see a good deal that they'll pick it up. Netflix had a lot of success with Need for Speed, which is all based around F1, and I think they had a new season for the new season of F1 once again. So I would expect Netflix is probably sniffing around. I would say, Will, that F1 is going to end up going to one of those streaming properties, maybe Apple TV Plus or Netflix, sometime next year. So F1 fans will be, I think, looking there. And incidentally, Formula One is actually on the upswing in the US market. Apparently NASCAR, which is also very popular, the average for 20 NASCAR races across broadcast, cable TV, etc. was down 9%, whereas the average for F1 was up 7% in the US market last season. So, F1's definitely apparently appealing to more and more Americans.
You watch it?
I don't myself. My sister is a huge F1 fan, lives for those races. She stays up into the wee hours to watch F1 races all over the world. So, yeah, there is a certain contingent that really love them, Will.
I don't watch, personally. I don't quite get it, but, opinion of one. I'm also not a soccer fan, so there you go.
Each to his own, right?
Each to his own. Now, we could talk about watching golf, which, of course, I'm sure does not impress anybody or most people, because for most that's like watching paint dry. But a
little bit like watching paint dry. So I sort of golf and cricket are sort of equivalent. Although I have to say, cricket's gotten a lot more popular since India has come up with innovations like T20 and some of the other really faster games where the emphasis is on scoring. Sports, it's a great, big, beautiful world of sport, Will.
Yeah, I was going to say those cricket references mean absolutely nothing to me. But again, I'm not a F1 or a soccer fan, so why should they?
Yeah, indeed. But I think that's probably it for this week, right?
It is. So thanks, Colin. Thanks, everybody, for listening in on this week's edition of Inside the Stream. And we will, of course, see you all again next week.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.